Well, as we wait for all of our attendees to trickle in, as you know, if you've been on Clearscope webinars, that I like to kick us off with a icebreaker. So I know we have an action-packed panel, top agency leaders and like the best of the best. So y'all are all superheroes in your own regards. And if you had superpowers that have gotten you to where you've gotten to, what would yours be? I will hand the mic over to you, Eric.
Okay, I get to go first. Great. The way I like to think about it is helping people I work with think about SEO from a meeting user needs perspective. We've had, as an industry, roots for decades around manipulation and things like that, and I work hard to steer people away from that.
Amazing. Allie, I'm just gonna sneak around and
Okay.
call on people.
When you first floated this question, I was thinking like classic superpowers. So what came to mind for me is like mind reading, but in the sense of being able to triangulate like audience data, spending time with my clients or customers' audiences, search data, and then user intent, and really trying to figure out the best way to get into the reader's mind, kind of echoing what Eric said in terms of meeting user value and providing useful information. So that's what I would say.
Love it. Love the mind read. I was like, oh, totally. Like reading SERPs and inferring intent. Anyways, Nigel, what about you?
Maybe different direction from Allie, not a traditional superpower, but skepticism. Just asking, because I feel like with SEO, a lot of like, we're just all these rules are drilled in. It was like, oh, you need links and this and this and that. So just like being like, do we really? What if that's not true? What if that's not true? I think, especially going forward, and maybe we'll touch on this in the webinar, that's going to be an important superpower. So I hope I'm right and I have it.
Will, what you got?
Uh, I wish that everyone could once a month zoom into a Bain or McKinsey or Ernst& Young consultant sitting with our clients. I recently got my ass handed to me in a meeting, and I learned so much by sitting in a room with somebody who's like just a straight up consulting shark and killer and knows how to drill in and create, like cut through all the noise and all the BS and just get right to it. It was painful, but one of the best experiences of my freaking 25-year career.
Wow, man, I need to get some of that clarity and just directness. All right, Amanda, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of pull all of this together, I think for me, it's laser vision in the sense of, in the traditional superpower sense, right? Cutting through the bullshit and getting to the real kind of situation, as well as being able to get to the heart of the issue. Maybe it's not actually necessarily the things that are published on your website, but the way that your business is organized and the way that you talk about things internally that has to actually change before you can change the things on your website. So for me, I'd say laser vision.
Focus. Yeah, I feel like I keep having to remind myself you gotta focus, and that is probably one of my weaker points. Okay, well, we got a full room. I'm gonna do a quick round of intros for our five wonderful panelists, and we'll dive in. We'll answer audience questions. We got a lot of community sentiment and different things that, I would love to talk about with y'all, specific to, how clients are changing and their beliefs around SEO. But we'll get into that in just a sec. Our five wonderful panelists. First up, we have Eric. Eric is the president of Pilot Holding, previously the founder and CEO of Stone Temple, an award-winning digital marketing agency that was acquired in July of 2018. He is also the co-author of The Art of SEO. Completely recommend this book. This is what kickstarted my career early on. And yes, it's known as the Bible of SEO. Next up, we have Nigel. Nigel's the CEO and of Organic Growth Marketing before OGM. Nigel was head of SEO at BigCommerce, and then later the growth and community evangelist. Over on your screen somewhere, we have Wil. Wil started SEER Interactive as a one-man operation out of his living room. Today, SEER is home to over 200 members across Philadelphia, San Diego, and around the world. 25 years of doing and talking about digital marketing, worked across all verticals, including pharmaceuticals, hospitals, e-commerce, SaaS, and he's pretty much speaking at all kinds of different conferences. Love to see him here. We also have Amanda. Amanda has been in the SEO industry over a decade and currently consulting through her business, Block. Along with a business-led strategies, she incorporates data, analytics, user experience, CRO, alongside SEO, which is fantastic because, you know, SEO is now way more than just links and content. Lastly, we have Allie, a co-founder at Omniscient Digital, an organic growth agency that builds content and SEO programs for ambitious B2B brands. Previously, she worked on content and growth programs at HubSpot and Shopify. Please give a warm welcome to our 5 fantastic and amazing panelists. I'm going to kick this one off with a sentiment that Wil has shared with the community around the decline in organic traffic and the need to re-educate clients on how SEO works or ought to work. So my question to y'all is, over the last 2 years, clearly search as a channel has been extraordinarily volatile. Lots of changes are happening. What are some of the dynamics that you see changing when it comes to the clients that you are serving and new leads that you're getting from people? Do you think that people are changing their requests? Is, you know, content production and search still, you know, what you felt it was? Or do you think that those flavors of conversations have changed? I'm going to start with Wil. What do you think?
Dude. No, the biggest thing that I'm noticing is just the ability to track the data we used to track is atrophying. And at least for me, if we don't get more holistic, we will undervalue our work. And therefore, we will not get budgets. And therefore, we will not get a seat at the table. Because if you continue to say, oh, if I rank here, here's my click-through rate, here's how many people I'm going to drive to your site, and here's our expectation on conversions. In a world where the SERP is changing so much, you can't do that anymore. When you see it just being so different industry to industry, you know, it's like, it's very verticalized as to how these things are impacting different industries. So for me, I'm just trying to figure out, where am I losing data from an SEO standpoint and having that be just fine. So for me, my traffic went down. What you're referencing is my traffic's down about 41% since around the time that ChatGPT launched, but my business is actually up 6%. So as a CEO, I'm thinking, I don't care about that, right? But if I was investing in SEO in the traditional sense, I might look at that SEO team and be like, well, your value just decreased significantly. And it's like, no, it didn't. People are coming in direct. They're reading our stuff in other places. They're sharing it with humans in WhatsApp groups and in Slack groups. I mean, look at the referrals you're getting from Microsoft Teams. Like, if you look at your referrals, you're like, Microsoft Teams is a corporate enterprise product for a lot of people. And we're getting crap tons of referrals out of Teams, which means this content is being shared in places that you just can't attach to Google anymore. So to me, I think that's that more holistic part that we've all been kind of talking about a good bit, but I don't care about, I can't pay any of these employees in search traffic. So therefore, my number one goal as a CEO is revenue. And if my revenue's up and my traffic is down, then I have to be like, okay, what kind of decisions do I make differently? And that's just where my head's been at lately.
Fantastic. Yeah, data referral tracking, all that stuff has been just getting more and more difficult. Nigel, any additional thoughts here?
Honestly, I agree with everything Wil said. I mean, one thing I'm talking about is that I think we all collectively have to unlearn the traffic expectations, because in the kind of old world, it's like you get a bunch of traffic and that's what people expect. And then they assume that everything flows downstream from that. And now it's like, okay, if the traffic's gone, like Wil was saying, do we have to not care about that? But I'm seeing many instances. I work a lot in B2B where like overall traffic looks decimated, and then like they had the best quarter ever from a revenue perspective. And I think the humbling conclusion that I've learned from that is like a lot of traffic is noisy. Traffic is very, very noisy. When you think about yourself as a user, it's like I'm searching stuff, going there back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like I'm not paying attention to half the stuff. And when you think about it through that lens, it kind of makes more sense. Like, oh, especially in B2B again, if people have burning problems, it's probably less likely that a quick answer is going to answer them. And most of your traffic is not coming from people with burning problems.
So true. So true. Amanda, you
Oh
she's
yeah, no, just to add on that, right? There's a reason that a good conversion rate is 3-5%. Like so much of the web is in that top of funnel or in that research. And I think to Will's point as well, to a certain extent, as consultants and business owners, we need to kind of eat the advice that we're giving to our clients in this age of generative search and AI, right? Where we are training our clients to remember that it's not our website that is our primary asset, it is our content. And that is becoming a lot more diffuse and a lot more kind of disseminated across so many different channels. We really have to not have all of our eggs in one basket, right? YouTube is a massive search engine, so is TikTok, so is podcasts. There are so many channels that, 5-7 years ago would otherwise have been bucketed into organic that are no longer a part of that. That we just need to remember that there are all of these different diffuse sources as well.
totally. Anything to add, Eric or Allie?
So a couple of things. It's great what everybody else said, Will, Nigel, and Amanda, because one of the things that we learned from the API leak is that Google actually wasn't the API leak, it was from the DOJ testimony by Google VP Pendu Nayak that they literally launched the Chrome browser as a primary purpose is to collect click data. They don't need that to collect click data coming out of the Google search results. They're collecting it from the other things that are happening on the web. So even as we're diversifying our traffic and being smart about dipping into other areas and bringing visitors to our site from all of that, we're actually helping your SEO at the same time while you're diversifying. Because Google wants to reward those things that, well, they're effectively brands. It's a way of measuring brand, right? It's like people are drawing traffic from all over the place. Then, yeah, that's probably a real business with some real value. People are being helped by them.
Yeah, I agree with everything. Amanda, I love what you said about content being more important than the website itself. We've went through our own unlearning, but we've also been educating our clients and their own unlearning. And obviously this depends on who our point of contact is. If we're working with CMOs or performance marketers, sometimes they're already aligned with the revenue being the finish line. But if we're working with other SEOs or content teams, historically, gold on traffic, that's what I was in my previous roles. And it is a process to be like, oh, this is what I'm working toward. But what it really is just mile one in that 26.2-mile marathon. So it is a good leading indicator. It's not the finish line by any means. So sometimes we communicate it in that sense of like, here's what we're looking at in the early days, here's what we're working toward in the end state. So
Totally. I feel like one of the big themes that, well, lots of themes picked up from this API leak, DOJ testimony, Chrome browser thing, which, Cindy Chrome did a very, compelling presentation that we're all part of Google's, distributed computational, engagement click thing. But I do want to focus on one core theme, which is unlearning. And it seems like there is a whole shift that we all seem to agree upon, that we have to unlearn some of the, tried and true traditional SEO best practices. Will calls this the sea of sameness to a degree. So I want to get tactical at this point, right? We all agree SEO has changed significantly. We also all agree that we got to unlearn some of the best practices. So can you give me a glimpse of how your internal processes have changed at each of your different agencies, consultancies? And, what are some things that you've been unlearning and what have you been replacing that with? Anyone want to kick us off? I didn't want to put anyone on the spot. If you're like,
Oh, there you
I'm
go.
still
We were
thinking
waiting
about
for you to do that.
All right, Eric.
Well, yeah,
I'm
I opened my mouth.
voluntolding
I made a
you.
mistake. Yeah, so that's how that works. I got that now. But so I think it's a process that's been going on for decades, to be honest. Right, ever since I got started in SEO more than 20 years ago. So, but one thing that I help a lot of clients with is, especially these people that are out there that are doing link building, and it's like, at least 90% of the things that you're attracting through your effort probably have zero value whatsoever. So I spend a lot of time trying to undo that with people and think about branding and marketing and like just being on these other sites that we already talked about in answer to the first question, is getting visibility that causes you more likely to have someone organically write about you in something where users actually click on the link and visit your site, and do things that have far more higher value than all that link building crap that people did forever.
I can chime in here. Tactically, one of the things that I started just having all these like tingles around like, okay, there's no data coming from any of these sources. Like there is no webmaster tools for Gemini. There is no webmaster tools for Perplexity. There is no webmaster tools for ChatGPT. So where will most of us, because I don't run teams at SEER, I basically just focus on the future and like where innovation's going. So I can't tell you exactly what we're changing at that level. That would be Elisa's job, not mine. But what I will tell you is because we warehouse all of our clients' data in one place, it lets us validate certain hypotheses really quickly. And so now one of the things that we're tactically doing is we're pulling in all the paid data for every client and we're counting up the number of unique words per query to see, because every client wants to know, are my customers more than likely starting to move over to ChatGPT and these other places? And all of us are going to say, I don't really know. If you look at analytics, the traffic is really low. So then it's like, how do I make better decisions? So what we said is, what data do we have at our fingertips? And we basically just built a simple little template that basically was like, take every client, take every search term that they have that month, count up the number of words in it, and give me the number of words per query by month. So then we're able to show certain clients on the hypothesis that if people are using chat more, you're just talking in your natural language. So then we started to use that we just use that as our hypothesis to then say people will start to put more words in over time into their queries. Because if you're using ChatGPT, you might start being like, oh, I'm looking for this. You're like, oh, I can't type into Google like that, right? It doesn't work that way. So that's how we're trying to help our clients tactically take a data set they already have from paid, where you get all the queries that actual customers are typing in. Screw what SEMrush has. I want the actual customer's voice, right? And I'm counting up those words. The other thing we're doing is we're looking at every search term that starts with the word I, because you don't start off Google with the word I ever. So what we're doing is we're trending out over time how many queries start with the word I, because that's another thing where most of my queries on ChatGPT start with, I'm looking to do this. I'm looking for a new hotel. I'm not like hotel in Barcelona, right? That's how you type on Google. So what we're trying to see is, does some of the behavior that's, and the reason why I kind of gravitated to this hypothesis is because it's the least amount of friction. In my head, I'm thinking, I want to go to a hotel in Barcelona that's like this. Google has taught me to type in Hotel Barcelona with pool, right? So because it's your natural state, I'm hoping that that starts to blend over into Google. So every month we're tracking out by client, how many of your queries are starting with the word I, and then based on that growth, we can tell you you're growing faster than anyone else in our database, which that our hypothesis is that you may have more of your customers going over to search on these kinds of search engines. And the last thing that we're doing is we're taking the referrals that you do get from Perplexity, ChatGPT, et cetera, and then in analytics doing a page level report so you can try to see where they're dropping people on. And what we're looking for is how often are they dropping people on your homepage, which means somebody's asking for a company, right? I'm looking for a company like this in search is different than, hey, I'm looking for a way to do this bounce rate thing in GA4, which would drop you on my blog. So we're trying to trend out over time. How is my homepage traffic growing from ChatGPT, Perplexity, yada, 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 to be like, okay, those people were asking for customers. Let's see if they have a different behavior than people that land on the blog posts.
Yeah, and a lot of people, by the way, sorry to jump in again, but are asking, is Google SEO going away because it's going to be replaced by generative AI tools? And you know, I don't think the answer to that is yes, but in fact, who was it? Gartner forecast a 26% drop over the next few years, or something like that. But whatever, it's another one of the things that we have to deal with that relates to all of this shifting of traffic.
Allie, Nigel, Amanda, any other unlearns?
I'll go ahead with this. One thing I'm unlearning for my clients that I think is a small thing, but quite important in this age of AI generated content, feeding AI generated content, is when I can, when it's feasible, I basically tell my editors to ignore the SERP first and talk to their customers, to their sales team, and to their support team. Talk to the people who are actually talking to their clients, or talk to their clients themselves to get content ideas, because LLMs are not intrinsically creating new content. They're telling you the most likely next thing. So in order to get any kind of fresh blood, we need to go back to basics. And so that when people have been open to it and it's been possible, I've just said, okay, start from scratch, talk to your teams, and do that first.
I love that sentiment. There's something, a language I've used with my team, and I call it the SEO sandwich. And it's like the meat of the sandwich is that data, not only from customers and audience members, but sales teams as well, to make your content incredibly resilient across the organization. And then you sandwich that meat with like audience information from SERPs or from Ahrefs, or just understanding search psychology, and then optimization tools like Clearscope to make sure that you're really covering all the bases in that sense. But the bulk of what you're creating is based on real data. Something that we've changed our mindset on, and I guess it's a recent learning and then a recent unlearning. So kind of the full circle here is AI content was such a conversation, like a year ago. All of our clients were like, are you using it? Are you using it? Can we do it like this? Will it make our prices like drop dramatically? So it was kind of this conversation we were having mostly in the sales process. And now folks are like, are you sure you're not using it? And I think the biggest point is like, it doesn't really matter. I think as long as content is useful, if it's meeting intent, if it's helping people solve problems, all these things that we've read about in the EAT documentation, et cetera. I don't really think it matters to what extent AI is used to create, modify, optimize content, as long as there's, a human read through at the end. So that's been like a recent learning and then an unlearning, I think, that our organization has gone through, is just kind of reducing the focus on that as a point of conversation.
I guess it's me, right? Kind of a riff on what Amanda was saying, and I think yours was more about not using SERPs for topic generation. And I was also very inspired by Will's post about the sea of sameness thing. I think one of the paradoxes of SEO is you can always be more confident you're going to rank when you make it more similar to what everyone else has, and then you can also be more confident that it won't resonate with people or move the needle when it's the same as everyone else's. And like, how do you reconcile these? So I'm kind of just approaching it more like, and the other thing is with how volatile Google is, I've never been less confident that when I look at a SERP, like I was sort of trained and came up for so long to say, you look at the SERP and that's like the word of God. That's what Google says all these people around the world want. And now I'm more like trusting my intuition, where I'm like, I think this kind of sucks. In a couple months, I feel like this SERP is going to get destroyed. And do we just do the thing that we're supposed to be doing to cover our ass and say that we're going to do it? Or do we say, look, we think that we don't have a ton of evidence that this will work, but it just makes sense. And we got to take more swings like that. And I think it's very difficult, especially, I think whether you're in-house or agency, there's a pressure. Like no one wants to F up. Everyone wants to do the safe thing. So you can't do this all the time, but I'm kind of pushing my team more and more to be like, do we think this makes sense? And if no, then like no one's making us do it. We don't have to do it. Like people are bringing us on because they trust us. But if we go too far in that direction, we just have to be prepared to answer like why nothing worked if all the hypotheses fail. But that's what I think is keeping SEO very interesting. There's like a lot of things that make people anxious, and I totally empathize with that. But I feel like it's coming more down to like, does this make sense to me? No. Well, I don't have to do it. And worst case scenario, I'm wrong. But I'm thinking more and more that I'd rather be wrong and doing what I think makes sense.
Yeah, one phrase that I'm bringing back when I'm talking to my clients is, would you do this if Google didn't exist?
Great phrase. Absolutely. Because
Yeah,
as soon as you're
remind
doing it because Google exists, you're down the wrong path.
Also, we're talking a lot about brands here, right? And it's like when you write that content that is, so this is one of these things I'm like, it's a fireball I haven't thrown out yet because I'm still processing it, but like, let's maybe throw it out. I'm like semantic search, like semantic, like fuck that. Because it's just going to tell me a bunch of stuff that I'm going to need to connect to this topic, which is going to lead me right down the path of the sea of sameness. Someone's like, oh, well, we scrape Google and we get all this stuff. And I'm like, wait a second. That's exactly what I don't want to write because you can't build a brand sounding like the 6 other sites above you. That's the problem. So like I'm trying to get branded search. I'm not trying to get any more, I'm trying to put something in someone's mind that they go, I want Sears version of this thing, not I want any version of this thing. And if you follow these kind of semantic rules, I'm thinking you get so generic and blah to get the ranking that you don't even remember whose company you were on when you clicked on the first 3 or 4 results. And then, as Bernard is fully aware of, like the coolest part is this concept of information gain. Like that was new to me because I torched so much of the SEO crap that I had on my page that was ranking well because it was like, I've been doing this for 25 years. None of what I would tell somebody to do to find an SEO company was represented in the blog post that was written on my own site. And I was like, I'm torching it. I don't care that it ranks number 4, right? It needs to be what I would actually help somebody with if they came to me and asked me for my opinion. And it dropped for a week and then went to number 1 after that. Right. And you're just like, but I didn't know anything about information gain at the time. So I was just like, I'm torching it because it's dog shit content, right? It's the sea of sameness content. It's the same thing everyone else says. Table of contents. What is an RFP? Quote, request for a proposal. Because I got to put the word in. That's the acronym. It's like, oh my freaking God, guys. Like, is this what you would say to somebody at a bar if they were like, how would I pick an SEO company? You would never say that crap, right? So I think part of the future is how do you get SMEs? So a hot take I've been using is an SME will destroy a content marketer. So my thinking lately has been, how do I get SMEs to give me their content, which is where I think voice AI comes into play. Because now while you're walking your dog, if I send you the right set of prompts and something you can call or that you can hit like Vapey, I'll just program it internally for my own teams to be like, yo, Facebook just made these changes, right? What do you think about them? And I just send out the freaking phone number to my team. And while they're walking dogs, doing whatever, they're just giving me content from an SME standpoint. Then you bring that all back. And now you've got some non-sea of sameness dog shit coming from actual SMEs who are doing the work while content marketers are throwing shit into tools that are giving them semantic. And I'm like, nope. Once I did that one post, I'm like, nope, I want to talk to actual SMEs and make it as frictionless as possible for them to get me the things that they're passionate about. And I'm going to kind of pepper in as little of the freaking semantics that I have to get the visibility. Because the real goal is the ranking is old, man. I want to get rankings that then people then post on social because social is the only place where you know a human gave a shit, right? So you got to start trying to use your content to win social, and then I'll back into trying to win SEO after that.
100%.
Will, I have a question for Will. How do you get your SMEs to produce content? What kind of processes do you build to get them to write and create that content for you?
So I don't get them to write if I don't have to, right? So when I run a content campaign, when I really want content out there that I can't write myself, I go to Vapi, it's vapi.ai, and I write a system prompt that's like, I want something that's written for a CMO that'll help them to solve blah, blah, blah problem. Don't accept answers that you think are too generic, too 101, too this, too that. So then when the team member calls the phone number or hits the web app, I just do this myself. It's just one system prompt. And
Yeah.
then when they call the phone number or hit the web app and they give an answer that is not in the direction I want to guide them, the AI naturally knows to be like, okay, but what about 3 tactical ways you would do it if I want a tactical post? Or like, those things are pretty common. What's something that you're doing that's uncommon? So the AI will naturally know based on the system prompt how to guide the person into something that makes them elevate and put their opinion out, which then is the way that I would like to go. So yeah, Vapey's been a really cool tool to use because you really work on that system prompt and you can send it out to tons of SMEs and be like, dude, you got 5 minutes to talk about something you're passionate about, don't you? But for me to sit you down with a blank piece of paper and be like, write something on this topic,
Yeah.
it feels arduous. You know, we all do it. It's hard. It's hard. It's really hard.
And that sounds like a good replacement for an interview too.
100%.
They're going to talk about it anyway. Yeah.
The only problem right now with Vapey is it has all the issues with voice that are like, it cuts you off and goes back and forth. So you have to do a lot of dialing of the knobs and it still can be annoying to some people. So that's the only downside that I'm seeing to it right now. But given the recent Google Live voice and that launched yesterday or the day before, and with ChatGPT's enhanced voice AI, you're like, okay, we're not that far away from it getting much better.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. This recurring theme is also popping up around trust and brand. And, subject matter expertise is certainly a way to build trust and brand. Let's say that I am a brand new B2B SaaS company, and I go to each one of your agencies or consulting firms, and I say, okay, lay out a plan for me to build brand and trust. I mean, yes, of course, I'm thinking about it as like I want search traffic, I want leads, and I want that kind of stuff. What is the way that you find yourself recommending trust and brand to clients? Because, it's very subjective. And I think, in this really data low world that we live in, like if you produce 10, 20 thought leadership posts for me, maybe 2 of them stick and 18 are duds. Like, how are you juggling and how are you recommending that clients actually build trust and brand? And how does that translate into the deliverables that you're giving to clients? Nigel.
I have an answer that's really not productive or actionable. Like, I feel like that's not my job. Like, as in, there's a whole bunch of things I can do to tinker with. Yeah, can we produce content that people trust? Yeah, all that. But like, when I think about all the best things I've ever worked on, it's like people did a bunch of good work to build a product, an experience, and a brand that people liked. And then when you build on top of that, when it comes to like content and search, then like we could leverage all that. And I don't know, like maybe people here have like some really great ideas that like I'm not on top of, but I feel like there's no fast answer for that. But I don't know. See what somebody else has to say.
My answer is a shade of the same color of that. I will generally tell clients if they're fully new coming to me, I will say, okay, talk to digital PR, build visibility in traditional media, in industry publications, have people that you trust start giving reviews and talking about your client and your SaaS product, because we don't trust people when they hype themselves up. And that intrinsically just doesn't work on our behavioral psychology. It's more of a turnoff than not. So it's doing that social proof and it's building that expertise visibly on the web. And that's, I can advise on that, but I am not a link builder. I don't do digital PR. So that's not something that I'll step directly in personally.
So I'd summarize it with sort of 2 main points. Find out what places on the web your target audience goes to. and then add more value to their needs in those places than anyone else. And that sort of becomes the two-step plan. Now, what the place is will completely dictate what the needs are, will completely dictate the nature of the things you need to do to add value. But you got to solve that problem. And that's how you build a brand.
Sorry, this is a bit of a grayer tactic, but Reddit is very popular right now.
Yeah.
So
That's funny. I was talking
into
about someone about this right before this call, and I was saying, whatever you do, just focus on adding value. You keep your whatever you want out of it crap away from there, because otherwise you're going to get in bad trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because I was thinking like early stage company, depending on, you know, how well the product is built out and how well their audience documentation is, we typically will recommend all of these activities as Nigel said, like to build that foundation and to build that brand, because it really can only come from really the founders or the early team of like, why are we doing this? What problem are we trying to solve? Why is this problem important to me? Like all of those things need to be infused, not just in the content, but in the comments that they leave on Reddit threads and the social media posts that they make. And it's going to be kind of, I don't like this phrase, but hacky for a while, pretty manual, pretty like analog. But that's where I think a lot of the meaning comes in, taking the time to do that and manually get out there and spread the brand and build, like you said, digital PR, Amanda. But like Nigel said, I feel like really accelerating brand awareness through SEO and content, it can't come before a really good product and a really involved leadership team.
There's an ethos component there too, Allie, right? Like, so I remember I used to show people on stage all the time. Back in the day, HubSpot, when they first launched their CRM, had a page they were trying to rank, or you guys were trying to rank for, CRM keywords or whatever, right? And they literally were like, Salesforce, #1, HubSpot, #2, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, up, instant trust. Like, it was funny because you're like, what company? It was in the ethos of the company to be like, either, hopefully it was honest, but it's like, we're not as good as them yet, right? We're good for this sliver of people, not these. And like, that's ethos. Like, a company needs to have a set of beliefs that like you build the brand around. Because like, if I tell a client, you know how you got those clients that are like, well, we can't link out to this content on this competitor's site because they're a competitor, it'll help them to rank in
Oh my
Google.
gosh,
And you're
Will.
like, that makes zero sense. Like, because again, to Eric's point is, if the goal is to help somebody solve a problem and add value, why are you playing dumb games like, oh, got to open all my links in new tabs so they don't forget about my site? Here's an idea.
Oh no, I'm going to follow all my links.
Or that, right? So you're going to spend time doing that crap, which has nothing to do with the value added. It's like, don't add friction for the customer because you're trying to play some stupid game. And I think that most companies fail at that, having that strong ethos that's like, oh, we're the #2, or oh, we're not for these people, or oh, this other person wrote this great blog post. And yes, they are my direct competitor, but that's okay because it's going to help you figure out your answer. We let all this other, for lack of a better word, business stuff get in the way of helping the customer, which then ultimately I think hurts us when we're like, well, why can't I build a brand? It's like, because you're the most vanilla fucking company out there. Everything you do is #1. Every case study goes up. Whereas like, we've been a really big, like, think about it. I go on stage and I show that my SEO traffic's down 41%. I'm supposed to be an SEO, right? Trust.
Yeah.
Trust. Wow, Will's willing to admit the thing that no one else is willing to say. Tons of my clients are down 30%. Why aren't more freaking speakers going on stage saying, oh yeah, half my portfolio is down 20% this year? It's going to make me look bad. Well, why am I not building a brand? Well, because you're not telling people the truth. Because it hurts. And sometimes it hurts to be that vulnerable on stage, but then that's actually how you build that connection where people go, I probably can trust you when you say you're good at this, because I saw you once literally admit that you sucked at this, or that you didn't do this well, or you didn't do that right. But that's an ethos thing, because then I got to share that with my team so that when they're out writing content and doing things, that they're like, well, Will did it, so I think it's okay for me to go show a slide that shows my traffic is down 41%. It's like, fuck yeah, it is. Go for it, right? Because it's honest, right? Not all of us are freaking thread boys, SEO bros on Twitter showing freaking Google Search Console traffic going up for every one of their clients. Like, that's not even true. Get out of here with that crap, right? It feels inauthentic. It feels like braggy, and it feels like that's not the real thing that's happening for most of your clients. So it feels very cherry picked. And you're not going to grow a brand doing that crap.
And I think as well that again comes back to the founders and it actually being people and doing that, because trust in so many ways is vulnerability. And if you can't trust, if it's not you as the founder or your early employees, like I think that's part of the reason why maybe we're seeing, amongst other things, affiliates starting to degenerate and fail a bit, is because 98% of people are in affiliate for the money, and they're not necessarily the expert or the SME on the thing. It's not necessarily the thing that they're passionate about. So they can't have that vulnerability and they can't build that trust because it's not there, because they're just in it for the money and the dollar sign.
Yeah. I mean, the affiliate thing is a whole rabbit hole for sure. So yeah, we've talked a lot about, trust, brand, all these different things. And that's because the landscape of SEO has been shifting. So we have a lot of active practitioners in the audience. And my next question to this very authoritative panel is, what should be the skills that our audience SEO practitioners ought to learn as SEO continues to evolve? Are we thinking more multi-channel? Are we thinking, more roping in subject matter expertise? Are we thinking more multimedia? What do you think over the next couple of years is going to be the next way that SEO practitioners can stay ahead of the game and continue to sharpen their skills?
Will, didn't you post something about this pretty recently?
It's the AI marketer survival kit. Is that it? The one on
I
like how
think
to
it
go
was
from
about something about skill sets. Of like traditional SEO skill sets are like not gonna make sense. So I think that's what you're referring to. Yeah.
I think that was more the one was the one I listed all the books on, where I was just like, you got to understand psychology. Like, you got to understand how people buy. Like, the more you understand how people buy, you can pop into email, you can pop into whatever. Oh, the industry's changing this way. How do people buy? Like, I have like 20 books that are like psychology. Like, how do people choose to make a decision to buy this shirt over some other shirt? Like, there's a bunch of stuff triggering up in here. If all you search is the fucking Google leak, you're not going to learn shit about people. And that's not going to help you ever in a world where Google is less and less traffic or whatever's happening. It's not going to help you a lot to know what happened with the Google leak when your customers are over on TikTok having the parts that make them make decisions about brands is triggering somewhere else. So I'm just a big fan of like, go learn what makes people buy and what makes people make decisions and how we trick ourselves into thinking things are true when they're not, and traps that we fall for, that we all fall for. Like, you got to learn that stuff, and you can apply that anywhere. But if you go too deep in one area and don't understand what that's serving, Jonah Alderson once said something and it stuck with me. It stuck with me for like 10, 12 years. He's like, what's the query before the query you're optimizing for? And I was in the room like, oh, that's so good, because it's like, what is the thing that the person was thinking before they type this into Google, right? And I'm like, oh, so I just think learning how people make decisions and how they make decisions that aren't in their best interests, right? All that kind of stuff to me is just really interesting. So that's where I would start. And then you can apply that anywhere. And I think that's great career protection, because people are still buying shit. I haven't heard that people are buying less stuff. What I have heard is people might be using Google slightly less to find those things. And that's why I think it's so important for us to understand, okay, well, where are they going? And how do I, to Eric's point, add value in those places? Well, if the only thing I know is how to go on a Reddit and be a freaking spammer, then it's not going to work, right? If I have actually learned how humans work as part of my SEO, I can like slide over here into Reddit and still add value there as well.
So from the journey perspective, there's a really interesting white paper that Google did, which you can find it just by search on Google messy middle white paper. And it's a wonderful, it talks about how there's some trigger that starts a user's journey, and then they go through a loop of exploration and evaluation, it happens, N times. I don't know what N is. It could be 3, it could be 70 different things they do. And we need to understand that those exploration and evaluation things are happening across many different platforms and many different media. right? And you really need to, like, if you're going to be very effective at this as an SEO, because all of this eventually does bring some benefit back to SEO. You got to understand that whole map of things, and that's a mouthful of a research project before you even get started.
I think this is less of a hard, could be a hard skill, more of a mindset. I think understand business, like understand how business works, speak the language of the executives that your clients are working with, or maybe your own if you're in-house. Get a seat at that table. I would say hard skills are really crucial for tactics and succeeding maybe in your quarterly goals, but don't let yourself get pinpointed into like your function or your team. Talk to sales, talk to performance marketing, understand like what happens after a conversion and maybe between MQL and SQL. Like if your strategy is driving a ton of MQLs and no SQLs, like figure out why. Like go in the CRM and understand how your business is functioning, and be able to prove your value. So I think that's something I learned the hard way in my previous roles. I was at larger organizations and I was very good at what I did, but I didn't understand the bigger picture. And it's been a really important lesson at the agency, as well as training up and teaching some of our own client points of contact, which has helped them become stickier in their roles too, especially as budgets get cut. We really want these programs to continue. You got to prove the value for the business.
In line with what Will was saying about behavioral economics and behavioral psychology, I think it's also important to build your understanding of how to build a brand as well, because that is what SEO in a lot of ways is becoming and is leaning towards. So being able to understand press relationships and journalists and what like spin is and all of these things about how to have those kind of founders and, you know, building those messages, that all becomes really important as well. And also becoming friendlier with the fact that we're not going to be able to measure everything. And that's a conversation that we really need to be having with the C-suite and the folks that have become used to those very up into the right forecasts and projections from SEO, and also to a lesser degree SEM channels as well. Like the attribution there is becoming less and less as well. We're in a much less attributable world in digital. I mean, it lasted what, 20 years, 10 years? And it's definitely on the decay. So
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead, Nigel. I was like, I don't know if you were gonna say anything. Go ahead.
just really quick, like I feel like for a long time, and I was very guilty of this as well. Being good at SEO was like following a process. It's like, how do you deconstruct what's ranking, redo it, make it slightly different, blah blah blah. And I think that's also kind of what Will you were alluding to in that video I saw you posted on LinkedIn that was very good. Like the whole skill set of, oh, add this SEO text to the bottom of the page or whatever, something like that. Like that shit is not going to work anymore. So I think really it's about having more of an experimentation mindset than like if you follow this process, because even if you follow the process and you rank, I think we're all kind of saying like, what is even the point of that necessarily? So just having more of like an experimentation mindset and being willing to take more risks.
I'm going to switch gears for just a second, and then we're going to go into our last final minutes of, we'll call it rapid fire. So if you have any burning questions, definitely drop them into the Q&A. But because we have the top agency folk here, I'm going to ask something involving just your experience with growing and scaling your freelance business to, an agency or, that kind of stuff. So a lot of people have worked in SEO, and some of them are thinking about, okay, maybe I should go into, doing some freelance consulting and or starting my own agency. So as some of the top agency folks out there, what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about springing off on their own, scaling either, a freelance shop or an agency shop? What were some of the big aha moments and unlocks that you had along your journey to building out your awesome agencies?
Taxes can kill you. So in your first year, you make a bunch of money and you don't realize at the end of that quarter, when that tax bill comes, I've seen agencies go out of business that had a great client base for their first year or two because they just didn't save for taxes. Taxes will literally kill your business. Like if you don't have somebody reminding you to set money aside with these clients that are paying you full out as a 1099, no taxes are coming out of that. You go get that new house, that new car. When the government comes for it, you can be in a world of pain. And I also think that the only advice I would have is most of us aren't doing nearly as good as we make it look to be. And I think a lot of people make it look easier than it actually is. So, you know, if you're looking for inspiration, follow people that are willing to be honest about their journey, because it's a lot of people make it look easy. And if you're even thinking about going out on your own, and if you're a year or two out from it, take the people that talk about how awesome it is and then put like follow-up email reminders to come back in a year and see how quiet they get about how successful they are. It's hard, but everybody talks about it when they start. And, oh, I got 3 clients today. And then 4 years later, 2 years later, the account's got no updates and none of that shit. So you got to just be ready for it. It's a little bit of a grind, you know? I also would say the only advice I would have for me is I dream really small. You know, everybody tells you dream big and all this shit. I dreamed really small. You know, I hope that someday I would hit a company that had $1 million in revenue was my goal someday. And I wrote it up on a chalkboard wall in my house. And I've exceeded that tremendously. And it was, I'm not going to say it was easy, but it was fun because I never put this outsized pressure on myself to try to be something other than, man, if I could just get to X, I'd be happy. And I didn't look at other people and how they were growing their business. Like, well, they're at 10, so I should be at 10. It's like, no, I'm happy. So the ability for you to be content with where you are is a superpower. Literally, we asked that question earlier, Bernard. Contentment is a superpower because you'd be surprised at when you're not trying to pressure yourself to grow, when you have no idea what that growth is going to do for you or your family, how unhappy you can be. You know, a lot of people are running their businesses extremely unhappy because it's not where they wanted it to be, but they're in a completely comfortable place. So, like, don't put your pressure on yourself. Enjoy the ride, follow people that are honest about the journey, and it can actually be a pretty fun thing. I've been at this for 22 years. And like I show up to work and I fucking love it still, you know? And it's because I just don't put a bunch of outsized pressure on myself to grow if it doesn't fit my ethos or the things that I want to do.
For me, it was all about calculated risk as well. I essentially worked, probably shouldn't be saying this too loudly, but I essentially worked 2 jobs in the last 3 or 4 months of my proper, real full-time job to get a runway so that if in the first 6, 8 months of my consulting, if I didn't get any clients, I could still pay my bills. So you want to have that buffer. That's not your personal savings. That is a business buffer of generally at least 6 months, a year, if you can manage it. But like Will said, like never assume that you're going to be successful right out of the gate either. It takes work.
And Will, where were you in the beginning of my journey? I really appreciated all that transparency and I echo it
I'm
for
still
sure.
here, girl. Anytime.
Yeah, I would say to echo what Amanda said, I mean, I worked, I think 2 years, 2 jobs. It was really, really hard. But what that provided me was not only financial security, my partners did as well, and also work with great people. My partners are some of the best people that I know. What that also provided me was really natural networking opportunities with just amazing masters at their craft. So not just in SEO, but like I said, salespeople, demand gen folks, even executives. I mean, I kind of knew the long game was to do this, and I took advantage of the time I was in-house, and it was really hard, but it was really worth it now. So I'd say, yeah, have an overlap. Work with amazing people that you trust your gut. You know, coming into this, a lot of the things I'm doing for the first time. And there's all these books and these blogs and these processes on how to hire and how to do this. And it's like, if you need a starting place, start there. But like what Nigel has said, like lead with skepticism and like trust your gut with a lot of this stuff. Do what feels right for you in the business that you're building.
So, my own experience, first of all, I was very lucky with the initial runway because I had worked 10 years at the company that I had been employed at previously before I started Stone Temple Consulting, and I had a year exit package. So I was covered. But the thing is, if you take on partners, first rule of partners is make sure they have a good financial plan, and they're not going to be looking for, shortcut ways to bring in dollars to pay their bills. Is building on top of what everybody else has said so far, and that's a real issue. But also, as you grow, you need to know that you're going to go through stages where the level of process grows steadily, if not exponentially. And by the way, at the same time, your connection to the day-to-day operations, if you're smart and you're delegating appropriately, you're going to get more and more disconnected, from a lot of things. You can still be the one driving a lot of how things are done and all that, but you got to be delegating to make it work. Even by the time you get to 5 or 10 people, you're delegating, and you're okay. They're not going to do it as well as you did. Get over it, or they're not going to do it the same way. And guess what? You're going to start finding out sometimes it did it better. Celebrate that.
Yeah. It's sort of funny listening to everybody, and there's sort of like, there's obviously a lot of different ways to go about this, but maybe two broad buckets are people there's like very premeditated, worked 2 jobs for a long time, super calculated, and then fell ass backwards into it. And I'm very much in the second camp. Like, I just quit my job and went to Thailand. It was like, ugh, I don't want to have a job anymore. Kind of sucks. Like, I want to just wake up without a job and see what happens. And I had zero expectation. I was like, man, if I ever get back to my old salary, if I even feel like consulting, that would be wild. And then in like 6 months I was there, and then it like multiples a little bit after. And I've been interviewed and stuff where people are like, so what was your plan? How did you know that you were gonna do this? I was like, if I had made that plan, I think I would have failed, or I don't know what would have happened, because like I would have had these big expectations, like Will was saying. So I really commend people that did that. But I was just like, I don't want to have a job, and then I ended up working way more than I even expected. But like it was sort of on my own terms, and like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is cool. Versus like I'd set up some goal that if I didn't hit, I was gonna be super disappointed.
Fantastic. Well, we're coming up right up the hour, and a lot of you are just strong SEO influencers out there, and I think that a lot of people are looking to really up their game and become more on the limelight. So I'm going to go ahead and ask all of you for your final remark to say, if you were starting out in your own SEO career today, and you're looking at, building yourself up over the next like 5 years, what would you recommend to our audience to really put themselves out there and to get them more influence, more followers, and, eventually part of the speaker circuit?
Build in public.
Build in public. There you go. Eric?
You kind of
I
stole
think
that
we
one.
covered it kind of in the same way we talked about you add value as a business. Just, find ways to add value to the industry. Whether it be, if you have a vertically specific industry, then maybe it's that industry. If it's a general digital marketing or SEO agency, then, get and target specific areas and just do everything you can to be a leader in them.
Yeah, I'd say if you're in-house, meet as many people as you can, understand how the business functions, look how to solve bigger problems than what your job description says, even driving new revenue if you can, if you're in an agency. if you're an individual consultant or maybe starting your own agency, I'd say just meet as many people as you can and do it really authentically. Don't like have GPT write you an email and then send it to 50 people and just change the first name. Like actually take the time to reach out to folks and try to get to know them, show up at events in your city, even if you're an introvert like me. It's really worth it. And it's nice to have friends in the space too.
Man, I think if you do cool, interesting shit, then you have something to talk about. And you can talk about something anyway, and it might not be interesting. You can get followers. I don't know. I'm not very good at this influencer thing anyway, but if you do cool shit, then you have something to talk about, and it's probably a lot easier.
Because I was a teacher, I always say like I didn't see growing influence as like BD. I think the biggest problem people make is they look at speaking and putting things out there as a way to grow a list or a way to grow a following. And we all can smell that on people, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna do this thread. And at the end of the thread, I'm gonna say, remember about my newsletter? Well, how about you just drop such dope shit that I go looking for your newsletter? How about that? Right? Like I know how to use Google, right? We're search people. So I think so often the pressure to grow a list, here's a little secret. The other day I'm on a newsletter and somebody let in with a video on YouTube from their newsletter. The way they describe themselves in their newsletter is I have 1.5 million followers on social, and this is a pretty popular newsletter, 600,000 newsletter subscribers. Second link in the newsletter was a YouTube channel. That YouTube video they linked to 4 days later had 200 views. People use followers, newsletter, and all that stuff as a proxy to look more successful than they are. So do not go trying to follow people to become a freaking influencer or some of that shit. If you just help a bunch of people and not try to, at the end, get something from them. I was a teacher. Like I was never on stage to be like, oh, let me try to get a lead from this. I was like, you're supposed to help people. That's why you're up there, right? Help people figure things out. And too often people will be on stage or try to grow their influence through ways that just feel kind of slimy. And then once somebody does that, you kind of like put them in that basket, even if they change their ways later. So just go out there and be your authentic self. Just try to help people solve problems. Like the other part will take care of itself. Trust me, the other part will take care of itself. Give freely anytime you can, help as many people as you can. And it usually comes back full circle.
There you have it. Well, thank you so much to our wonderful 5 panelists, Allie, Nigel, Amanda, Will, Eric. It was a complete honor. There's so much wisdom here shared, and it really boils down to trust, helping people, value, and really, going and creating content that you're proud of, that you would want to share. And, I think we've come a long way in SEO, but hopefully with, Google overlords monitoring all of our user behavior on Chrome, they're way better at sniffing out bad, crappy stuff that no one wants to read. So go make worthy content that people want to share and read, and, keep us all posted. Obviously, follow all these wonderful influencers because they give so freely their advice and their wisdom. And we hope to have you back at some point to chat more about SEO and all the craziness that, plagues our industry. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you
Thanks, everyone.
next time.